What if I told you that self-confidence isn't what you think it is? It's not about appearing bold or loud or impressive. It's something deeper, and it's something anyone can learn. I'm Dr. Thomas Smithyman. I'm a clinical psychologist and author. I've spent decades helping people work on their self-confidence, and I've been through the process myself. For years, I thought self-confidence was about projecting an image or trying to fake it till you make it. But psychological research, and my own experience, have taught me something completely different. In this video, I'll share what self-confidence really means, why what we usually do doesn't work, and how we can build lasting, authentic self-confidence. You might have seen claims on the internet that 85% of people struggle with low self-esteem. This appears to be based on no data at all, several mysterious studies that I couldn't find, but I will say self-confidence is something that comes up in my work all the time. For some, probably goes back to childhood. Maybe you weren't encouraged or taught that you have value no matter what you do. This is known as unconditional regard, and it's critical for self-confidence. For others, confidence issues might stem more from what's happening in the present. The heavily researched sociometer model suggests that how good we feel about ourselves depends a lot on how popular or liked we think we are. Whether tied to childhood or your current situation, a lack of self-confidence doesn't just make us feel bad, it can affect how attractive we seem. If you have ever asked anyone, what makes someone attractive? The first thing most people say is confidence. Since confidence is such an attractive trait, many of us fall into the trap of faking it. We mimic confident behaviors because that feels easier than figuring out how to actually become confident. Even psychologists sometimes use this idea in their studies, asking participants to act confident, talking loudly, spreading out their arms, lots of eye contact, tall posture, big gestures. The idea is if you act confident, people will believe it and they'll find you more attractive. You might assume I'm going to say faking it is a bad idea. And I am. But first, let's admit this idea actually makes some sense. Like, consider this. Have you ever stopped to ask why confidence is considered attractive? I am a nerdy psychologist, so I have asked that. And it turns out it comes down to something called the status signaling model of self-esteem. Basically, when we meet someone new, we know very little about them. So, confident behavior makes us assume, oh, they value themselves, which must mean they're competent or they have a lot going for them. This effect is so strong that even people who aren't actually competent, but act like they are, get treated as though they're great. But if you've ever worked in a corporate setting, you already know this. So, sending out fake signals of confidence can seem tempting. It can make you appear attractive or successful. But there's two big problems with this approach that I'll get into now. Have you ever met someone who seems confident at first, but as you spend more time with them, it becomes clear they're actually trying too hard? Well, faking confidence might seem like a good idea, like it can get you through a tough moment or make a quick impression, but it's not a lasting solution. Even if you send out some big signals like speaking loudly or, taking up a lot of space, you'll still reveal your true level of self-esteem in smaller, subtler ways. So Sigmund Freud, the inventor of psychoanalysis and the man who discovered eel testicles, he captured this perfectly. He said, if his lips are silent, he chatters with his fingertips. Betrayal oozes out of him at every pore. This means that no matter how much we try to control how we appear, our true feelings often find a way to show through. So faking confidence with the status signaling method might work in the short term, like during a first impression when people don't know anything about you. But over time, people will gather more information, and when your actions don't align with your true self, then you risk being seen as dishonest or inauthentic. And research shows us that this kind of disconnection really pushes people away. People really don't like it. But I'd argue what's worse is how it feels internally. When your behavior doesn't match your inner reality, it creates a feeling of disconnection. And the research says that that can lead in time to anxiety, depression, or feelings of regret. But here's the good news. You don't need to fake it. Real confidence isn't about pretending to be something you're not. It's about something much simpler and fully within your control, no matter how you feel about yourself right now. Let's talk about this. If you're trying to appear self-confident, well, you need to know what real confidence actually looks like. So, stop for a second. What comes to mind when you imagine a truly confident person? How do they act? How do they look? What's their facial expression? We're constantly shown a very specific image of confidence. On TV, in movies, or on social media, confident people are often portrayed as leaders, grabbing attention, dominating conversations, not caring what others think. They're always wearing the right clothes, they're achieving highly in whatever they try, they're exuding gravitas and, maybe some anger. But is that really confidence? Here's the surprising part. This stereotype, it doesn't really match up with what research shows about confident people. The studies paint like a pretty different picture. People high in self-esteem, according to research, are more likely to be warm, kind, and non-defensive. They're more likely to smile instead of giving off an intense, dominant stare. They're humble, they're approachable, and they have healthy, fulfilling relationships. What this means is that the stereotype of confidence we see, it's misleading. Like, it actually looks more like overconfidence, edging, unfortunately, into narcissism, which is distinguished by a sense of superiority and grandiosity and self-centeredness. But wait, maybe you're asking, that sounds fine. Didn't you just say that being bold and valuing yourself highly makes you more attractive? Well, yes, but it gets tricky. This is because of something one scholar calls the chocolate cake effect. Like chocolate cake, narcissistic people seem appealing at first. That initial flash of overconfidence is great, but it fades quickly because they lack warmth and empathy in a lot of their behaviors. So narcissists may look like they have a lot to offer, but if they don't actually follow through in offering that, then people tend to stop liking them. Research shows that people are actually more attracted to those with moderately high confidence rather than extreme confidence. Okay, why is that? Well, extreme confidence signals there's a risk that maybe there's some narcissistic traits going on here, and for a lot of people that's going to be a red flag. So, if confidence isn't what we've been taught to think it is, then what is it? Personally, I struggled with this question for a long time, trying to project confidence without actually feeling it internally. But eventually, I found a solution that changed everything for me. And also for honestly, a bunch of other people that I talk to. So, I'll share that with you now. So let me take you through a moment that changed everything for me. I discovered what self-confidence really means, and it's simpler and it's more achievable than you might think. What if I told you that self-confidence isn't about feeling great, looking perfect, or being better than people? What if it's about something deeper, something within your control, regardless of how you feel in the moment? Self-confidence, at its core, is about being faithful to yourself. The word itself gives us a clue. The fidens part of self-confidence is related to the Latin word fidelis, which means faithfulness. Con means with, so self-confidence can literally be translated as faithfulness with the self. And to remind myself of this fact, I began calling it self-fidelity. Here's the key. To be self-confident, you don't need to impress others or pretend you're something you're not. All you need to do is know who you are and own that, whether people like it or not. For example, I could be in a pressure-filled situation and I don't focus on how I want to appear to people. Instead, I ask myself, what is true for me in this moment? And so if I see someone I want to talk to, I will approach them, even if it feels scary. In group discussions, I'll share my honest opinion, even if it's not popular. If something bothers me in a relationship, I will choose to speak up rather than avoiding conflict to keep the peace. You don't need to feel amazing or achieve perfection to be self-confident. You don't have to be wealthy, have the perfect body, or prove that you're better than other people. The good news, The research shows that authenticity, which is the heart of self-fidelity, builds a sense of self-worth that isn't tied to external achievements or other people's opinions. This means it makes you less dependent on outside validation for your self-esteem. Here's another important point. There is no one way to look or act confident. That loud, attention-grabbing person at the party can be confident, but so can the quiet, thoughtful person who listens carefully and then shares their opinions. Even the person who chooses to do a solo movie night instead of a party can be self-confident. I've met people with vastly different personalities. Introverts, extroverts, anything in between, who are deeply self-confident. What they have in common is their ability to recognize and stay true to themselves. That's what self-fidelity is all about, knowing who you are and owning it. When I started living this way, everything changed. I felt better about myself and my confidence grew over time. The research backs this up as well. One of the biggest scholars in this area maintains that authenticity, which is so connected to self-fidelity, is the best route to optimal self-esteem. But if self-fidelity is the answer, why isn't everyone just doing it? There's a reason it's so hard, and it's rooted in something we've all struggled with. So let's explore that next. If it's the key to real confidence, why aren't we just doing it all the time? Well, the answer lies in our basic human struggle, the conflict between being accepted and being authentic. This is something that we have dealt with our whole lives, and we will continue to face. We don't want to lose the acceptance, the connection, the approval, or the love of the people in our lives. Because of this, we sometimes ignore our own needs, we stay quiet about issues, or we hide parts of ourselves that we think other people won't accept or appreciate. In trying to keep acceptance, we often sacrifice our authenticity. But here's the good news. The moments when you take that risk to be your true self, even when it feels like you might lose connection, these are the moments when you really demonstrate your self-confidence. That's when self-fidelity really shines, and people will see that. Okay, I do want to emphasize something important here because it comes up a lot in my work with people. To be self-confident, you don't need everyone to agree with you. You also don't need to convince other people that your opinion is the right one. Self-confidence is simply about owning who you are and where you stand. And this is part of what makes self-fidelity so powerful. It allows for so many ways to show up in the world, because being true to yourself isn't about fitting a mold, it's about being your authentic self. One of the great things about self-fidelity is that it doesn't just make you feel good, it also earns you respect. So when you stop people-pleasing and you start staying true to yourself, people begin to notice and they'll treat you differently. If you act as though you're valuable, people would believe it and they will treat you accordingly. But if you act like you don't matter, others will follow your lead. And this is important because many of us, we don't actually need to be more likable. We're already warm, we're already curious, we are already caring. What we need is to balance all that warmth with self-fidelity, knowing and owning our worth. When you mix likability with self-fidelity, and maybe a touch of flirtation, it becomes an unbeatable combination. You show that you care about others, but not at the expense of devaluing yourself. And this is a deeply attractive quality. Despite what you might hear on the internet, people who practice self-fidelity and authenticity are seen as being romantically attractive. Honesty and trustworthiness, two qualities closely tied to self-fidelity, are consistently found to be among the most universally desirable traits. These qualities help reduce fears of being abandoned or manipulated, thus creating a sense of safety in relationships. Being authentic also signals that you can be a reliable partner or potential reliable future parent. Research suggests people value honesty even when the truth is not pleasant. When we're honest about something difficult, we don't only share the verbal information, we also demonstrate courage and sincerity, and these are very appealing. And interestingly, studies show that we often underestimate how much other people value authenticity and how negatively they view concealment. Okay, in relationships, self-fidelity is a key driver of satisfaction. Studies show that believing your partner is authentic leads to greater relationship happiness and less conflict. When partners share their genuine feelings, it helps create a sense of connection, like being on the same wavelength. On the flip side, hiding your true self can have some pretty serious downsides. Suppressing our emotions so they don't show increases stress and it weakens intimacy over time. Not just for you, but this impacts your partner in the same way. At our core, most of us want to be loved for who we really are, despite our flaws and our imperfections. And that is why self-fidelity is so important in relationships. When someone tells me their partner is losing interest or attraction, my first question is normally about their current level of self-fidelity. Even in good relationships, staying true to yourself can become harder as you grow closer and more attached to your partner. I've learned this the hard way. Self-fidelity, being truly honest about your feelings and needs, isn't just about loving yourself. It's also about loving the other person enough to be honest with them, even when it makes you feel uncomfortable. This can be really challenging, even though research shows that authenticity strengthens relationships. Sometimes, when things seem to be going well, it can feel easier to avoid conflict by keeping quiet about our own needs. But I've seen over and over again that this approach can backfire. I talked to someone once who thought he was putting his partner's needs ahead of his own. He thought he was showing love by always going along with what she wanted, and he thought that saying yes to everything would keep the peace. So he was surprised when she told him that she'd started losing attraction and interest in him. He was confused because he believed his actions were demonstrating love. And what I told him was this: having self-fidelity in a relationship is a deeper version of love. You love them so much that you are willing to tolerate the discomfort of being honest with them. This isn't easy, especially for those of us who want to make others feel good. For us, it's actually a sacrifice, but it is one that ultimately leads to stronger and more fulfilling relationships. And I have sadly had to learn this lesson again and again in my own life. Practicing self-fidelity doesn't just change how people see us, it changes how we see ourselves. If you read my book, you know about Rejection Month, when I made it a point to face rejection repeatedly. At first, it felt terrible. My confidence, especially the kind that's tied to external validation, it just tanked. But as I kept going, something amazing happened. I felt my confidence rise in a completely different way. It wasn't about how others saw me, it came from being authentic and faithful to myself. I was doing hard things that truly mattered to me, and I wasn't letting fear hold me back. I still remember saying, I feel so confident now, not because people like me, but because I like myself. And here's the funny part, as soon as that happened, people started liking me as well. And this isn't just my experience. Research backs this up too. Authenticity, which is staying true to yourself, is strongly linked to lower anxiety, higher self-esteem, and a greater overall sense of happiness. Self-fidelity isn't just a confidence builder. It's a game changer for how we feel about ourselves and our lives. Self-fidelity isn't about how you look to others or how you present yourself. Yes, it's an attractive quality, but our focus is internal. So over the years, I came up with a self-fidelity diary exercise that really helped boost my self-confidence. I can maybe show that if people are interested. But I also started looking for behavioral opportunities to put self-fidelity into practice. Things like practicing disagreeing or agreeing honestly, expressing likes and dislikes openly, standing up for your rights and your needs when it matters, sharing experiences and interests with people, showing romantic interest when you feel it, reducing the number of secrets that you keep, initiating interactions rather than waiting for other people, making choices that align with what truly matters to you, and also living up to the promises that you make to yourself, which is focusing on integrity. Spend time trying to identify who you are and what matters to you. Then show that to people. When you live in alignment with your true self, you stop chasing confidence. It happens naturally. You stop seeking approval from others because you trust yourself. And the best part, the relationships, the respect, and the happiness you get, they're built on something real. That's the power of self-fidelity. Okay, so self-fidelity is powerful, but it's not the whole story. If you focus on it alone and you ignore the other key principles, you might run into problems. In fact, it is possible to approach self-fidelity in ways that create new challenges. So, keep watching to discover how to balance self-fidelity with the other traits that create deep confidence and lasting connections.